Hi, I'm Ellen from the Chili Dog, and today I'm going to show you how to knit an I-cord, like the one I'm using for the strap on my little bird's phone pocket. I-cords are like stretchy, tubular little ropes. They can be used as straps and handles on bags and are sometimes used as a decorative edging. Generally, I-cords are worked around 3, 4, or 5 stitches. Technically, you are knitting the stitches in the round, but since the circumference of the knitting is so small, you actually knit an I-cord on a pair of double-pointed needles in what looks like rows. Let's get started. You can use just about any cast-on you like to knit an I-cord. If you're really fussy and maybe you're working on a little bit heavier yarn and you want a more rounded end to your I-cord, you may consider using a circular cast-on method like Emily Ocker's cast-on or some sort of disappearing circular cast-on. But for my purposes today, I just used my favorite long tail cast-on to cast on my 4 stitches. Once your stitches are cast on, you want to work them in the same order that they were cast on. So this was my first cast on stitch. I cast on from right to left. So I want to make sure to knit them in that same order from right to left. Had I used like a knit cast on or a cable cast on where my stitches were cast on from left to right and this was the first stitch that I cast on, I would need to actually turn my work over before knitting my stitches. But in this case, all I need to do is slide my stitches down to the other end of the needle so that I can knit them in the same order that they were cast on. Once I get to the end of the needle and have knit my 4 stitches, again, I'm just going to slide them down to the other end of the needle and knit them again in the same order. Slide to the other end of the needle and knit them in the same order. Slide to the other end and knit across. Slide to the other end and knit across. I've worked my I-cord for a few rounds here, and you can see the stitches on this side of the I-cord look really nice and neat, but sometimes on the other side you'll notice that the stitch in between that last one and the first one on the needle, it's a little bit wide and it gets a little bit spread out compared to the others. There's a couple ways you can remedy that. One is by making sure to pull really tight when you start knitting that first stitch after sliding it down to the other end. The problem there is that your stitches then get really close together and it can be really hard to knit them. What I usually end up doing is just pulling my I-cord slightly and rolling it between my fingers. And watch what happens. Again, this is before, with a little bit of a gap here, right down the edge. I'm just going to pull the I-cord and just roll it between my fingers a little bit. And that kind of evens out that tension. And now, when we flip it over to the other side, we don't have those huge stitches anymore. So once you knit your I-cord to your desired length, now we can finish things off. So in this case, I've just finished knitting my 4 stitches. I'm going to slide the stitches down to the other end of the needle. I already cut my yarn. I'm going to thread that yarn onto a yarn or a tapestry needle. And then to finish things off, we're just going to pull our tapestry needle through our I-cord stitches, again in the same order that we've been knitting them. So I'm just going to go right through the stitch purlwise and drop it off my knitting needle. And then once I'm through all 4 stitches, or however many stitches wide your I-cord is, you can just go ahead and pull the yarn tail through to finish things off. And again, even with the different cast on, not using a circular one, it still is a fairly nice edge on the cast on edge, which is down here, and our finished edge up here. Since I'm using my I-cord as a strap here on my little bag, you'll notice that I did not trim these yarn tails off right away. Instead, I used the yarn tails and my yarn needle to pull the tail and then the I-cord through the side of my bag. Then I tied the I-cord in a knot around itself. And finally, I'll use this yarn tail threaded onto a yarn needle, and I'll use the yarn tail to tack down the knot, both to secure the knot so it doesn't come untied, and also to secure it so it doesn't slide up and down the rest of the I-cord. Once that's done, then I can use the yarn needle and pull this yarn tail through up inside the I-cord and then trim the tail off so that the tail is concealed inside the middle of the I-cord. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to knit an I-cord. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to try an I-cord in a pattern, head over to the shop section of thechilidog.com and look for my Little Bird's Phone Pocket. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!